Chapter 111. Death or a PU. He thought that the other party would speak of some theory to convince him of it. Hearing his words, however, Apothecary Xianxia almost puked blood. Just because I'm not eating or sleeping well, you say that I'm going to die. You're the one who is going to die. Your family is the one who is going to die. Not just him, the other examiners also glared at him furiously. Apothecary Xianxia was an esteemed figure in the circle of apothecaries, and they had always respected him. Yet, this fellow dared to curse him straight to his face. Do you dare to spout any more nonsense? I have been an apothecary for many years. Even though I have been stuck at this level for very long, I have been working diligently and studying hard to improve myself. I might not be a talented genius, but I am well aware of my body's condition. The reason why I haven't been sleeping well and eating well is because of the numerous miscellaneous affairs in my household I tend recently. There hasn't been anything off about my physical condition other than that. So, why do you say that I'm about to die? Apothecary Xianxia harumphed. Apothecaries often came into contact with medicinal pills, and even though they were inferior to physicians in terms of diagnosing, they were still slightly learned in the aspect. You aren't wrong. There isn't anything wrong with your body. Xianxia calmly replied to the suspicions he rose. Nothing wrong? Then, what are you talking about? How spiteful, how can you take these words as a joke? This is a pill debate, not a session for you to curse Apothecary Xianxia. Upon hearing him admit that there was nothing wrong with Apothecary Xianxia's body, everyone started to bellow at him angrily. If there was something wrong with his body, they could let this matter slip. However, since there was nothing wrong with his body, how could such nonsense be acceptable? Feeling baffled, Xianxia and the others stared at him. He. Xianxia was completely nonchalant to the rebuke of the crowd. He simply smiled lightly and said, "Who says that one cannot die if there's nothing wrong with their body?" What do you mean? Upon seeing his calmness and confidence, Apothecary Xianxia felt goosebumps rising all over him. Just as he was about to continue questioning him, Xianxia waved his hands and said, "Since you don't believe me, let's first take a look at the pill." At which, the eyes of the crowd fixated on the tranquil heart pill Apothecary Xianxia had just forged. Apothecary Xianxia is a level-headed and calm person. He has reached a high level of mastery in his skills in forging pills, and if I were to forcibly speak of a flaw of his, none of you will believe me. It would be troublesome to verify my claims as well. Xianxia smiled. Since that's the case, I won't talk about the flaws in his forging method. I shall just talk about this pill here. Just like the one Apothecary Meng Yang forged, if this tranquil heart pill is consumed by a cultivator, it would aggravate his anxiety and even cause his death. What? I have been examining Apothecary Xianxia's method in forging the pills closely, and there isn't the slightest mistake in his actions. Furthermore, his pill has reached the level of perfection, so how can it worsen one's anxiety? This isn't a place for you to spout nonsense. No one believed Xianxia's words at all. The reason why there was a problem with the tranquil heart pill that Meng Yang forged was because he killed his concubine, resulting in the killing intent in his body to billow such that even he was unable to curb it. On the other hand, Apothecary Xianxia had a calm nature, which was compatible with the state of mind one required to forge tranquil heart pill. If so, how could it worsen one's anxiety? Even if you wish to spout nonsense, you should have had something better to say. If you don't believe me, we can try it out. There are pill sample beasts here. Xianxia pointed to the cage. Other than the two that were exercising together, there were still other pill sample beasts in the cage which were lying calmly by the side. Let's give it a try then. An apothecary who didn't believe his words casually picked up a tranquil heart pill and placed it into the mouth of a pill sample beast. After consuming the tranquil heart beast, the pill sample beast didn't get agitated as the previous one did. It also didn't grab another one of its kind to exercise on it. Instead, it laid by a corner, not moving at all. How is it? A tranquil heart pill can calm a person's mental state. The lack of movement in this pill sample beast means that the pill is taking effect. What else do you have to say? The apothecary harumphed. The others also looked toward Xianxia. Previously, Xianxia said that consuming this heart pill beast would worsen one's anxiety. Now, It was clear that the pill was working as it should and there wasn't anything queer about it. They were curious to see how he would answer. Give it a moment. Xianxia didn't say anything else and simply sat quietly on his chair. After 10 minutes, the pill sample beast still didn't move at all. At this point, the apothecary who fed the pill sample beast the pill couldn't hold it in any longer. See, it hasn't moved at all. This clearly shows that the tranquil heart pill is working as it should. Are you trying to waste our time by having us wait? It's okay now. Xianxia said. It's okay. The apothecary frowned. What do you mean? It is clear that this pill sample beast isn't anxious in the least given how it is still lying quietly by the corner. How do you want us to see? The reason why it is lying quietly by the corner doesn't necessarily mean that the tranquil heart pill has taken effect. It can also mean that it is dead. Xianxia said. Dead. The apothecary was taken aback. He immediately rushed forward, opened the cage and grabbed the pill sample beast out. With a single glance, his eyes narrowed abruptly. How is this possible? The pill sample beast in his hand had already breathed its last. Its body was already starting to turn cold. How long had it been? To turn cold within 10 minutes, it meant that it had died a short moment after consuming the pill. It's really dead. The tranquil heart pill should only calm a person's spirits, so why would it kill a pill sample beast? A pill sample beast's constitution is suited for testing pills. It is impossible for ordinary pills to kill it. What is going on? A commotion broke out. After eating a tranquil heart pill, the pill sample beast died? If a cultivator were to consume it, wouldn't it mean his demise as well? Apothecary Xianxia's complexion darkened. He retreated several steps consecutively and disbelief could be seen in his eyes. This is impossible. I followed the forging method strictly. There isn't the slightest error in it. Even if I fail to form a pill, it shouldn't turn into poison. Why was the pill sample beast poisoned to death? It was a huge crime for an apothecary to poison someone to death through the pills he forged. He had never met with such an incident throughout his entire life, so why was all of these occurring now? Xianxia, what's going on? With a bewildered expression, Ouyang Cheng sought clarification. At this point, everyone's gazes also focused on Xianxia. He was able to tell the problem in this tranquil heart pill and he knew that the pill sample beast would die. Who else was more appropriate to explain the situation other than him? I have already revealed the flaw in his forging method, so I should have already passed this test. Do I really have to explain it? Xianxia didn't reply Ouyang Cheng. Instead, he turned to look at apothecary Xianxia. He was able to identify the problem in the pill and he successfully pointed it out. This bore testimony to his abilities and in this clash between him and apothecary Xianxia, he could be considered to be the victor. If you explain the situation, I am willing to admit defeat. Apothecary Xianxia gritted his teeth. Even if Xianxia were to win in this clash, as long as Xianxia didn't admit defeat, he would be able to conduct a round of examination. As the oldest one of the 10 apothecaries, his surrender would cause the confidence of the others to waver. As such, this matter was of utmost importance. If that's the case, then allow me to speak more on the matter. Xianxia nodded his head. There are no problems with the sequence and technique you forged the tranquil heart pill with. In fact, you even infused your own tranquility into the pill. Rationally speaking, the pill should be of extremely high quality with high effectiveness. However, it's a pity that you are about to die. Your body is already filled with death aura and naturally, the pill you forge will come into contact with this aura as well. This is the reason why the pill sample beast died upon consuming the pill you forged. Chapter 112. Chengjiang, could it be that I am really going to die? Apothecary Xiao's mouth quivered and his entire body shivered slightly. The first time Xianxia said these words, he thought that the other party was cursing him, so he didn't pay it any heed. However, upon seeing the pill sample beast die upon consuming the pills he forged, he was rattled. Even more so, he felt fear. Seeing him in such a state, everyone felt bad for him. They wanted to console him, but they couldn't find the right words to say. If he weren't on the verge of death, how could a pill sample beast die just like that from eating the pill he forged? It was clear that what the other party said was true. I have explained what I should. Who wants to challenge me next? Xianxia scanned the surroundings. No. Brother Xianxia, don't be in such a hurry. Apothecary Chen Xiao couldn't hold it in any longer and looked to him in panic. Instead of addressing him as a lad, he addressed him as brother now. Why? Is Apothecary Chen Xiao unable to accept the results and would like to experiment once more? Xianxia looked over. No, I want to learn. How will I die? If you can tell me the truth, I am willing to have my body smashed to smithereens to repay this favor to you. Apothecary Chen Xiao pleaded. There weren't any problems with his body. Even if his appetite dwindled and his quality of sleep decreased, it shouldn't cause his death. As the person in question, how could he know nothing when he was already on the verge of death? I will tell you honestly then. Even though there were no mistakes in your skill and movements when you were forging the pill, your body is slightly stiff. It is clear that your vitality and strength aren't what they used to be. Most important of all, parts of your skin have started to turn gray, similar to the livor mortis that appears on corpses. If I'm not wrong, you have applied a special kind of medicine on your skin to conceal it from sight. In actuality, your entire body is already speckled with gray spots. Xianxia looked over with piercing eyes. Looking as though he had been struck by lightning, Apothecary Chen Xiao's eyes narrowed as he retreated backward in fear. Just like what the other party said, there were spots on his body. He thought that it was a kind of rare disease and he intended to find time to seek out Master Yuanyu and have him take a look. After all, it didn't hurt or itch, so he didn't pay much attention to it. To think that it would be livor mortis. Sir, please save me. Suppressing his gasps of shock and fear, Apothecary Chen Xiao no longer held any doubt for the other party's words. He clasped his hands together and pleaded. His address also changed from brother to sir. Regardless of who it was and how long he has lived, no one wished to die, especially when death appeared before them. Everyone would seek any means to live on. Have you obtained some treasure recently? If I'm not wrong, you probably took it from a corpse. I shall not explain any further. If you wish to live longer, it is best that you not touch it anymore. Xianxia waved his hand. I will end my advice here. Good luck. You. Hearing his words, Apothecary Chen Xiao froze once more. What the other party said was true. He had obtained a cauldron recently and it was much better than the one he had been using. He had been treating it as a precious treasure, stroking it daily. If he could, he would even sleep beside it every day. This cauldron was taken from the hands of a corpse, one that had departed not too long ago. This person gave him the cauldron in hopes that he would take revenge for him. However, his enemy was way too powerful, so he only agreed to do so casually back then. He did not intend to exact vengeance in his stead. After which, the person died and he no longer bothered about the matter. Could he mean this cauldron? He obtained his cauldron clandestinely. Not even his family members knew of it. How did he know of it? Apothecary Chen Xiao took a good look at the young man before him once more. This time, agitation could be seen on his face, as though staring at a specter. All right, who's the next one? Ignoring the elder, Xianxia turned to look at the other 8 remaining examiners. Actually, Chen Xiao was inflicted with not an illness but a curse. He agreed to seek vengeance in another's stead, and in exchange, the other party gave him his most precious treasure. However, he went against his words and the other party predicted that he would do so. As such, he imprinted the curse on the cauldron. If he got close to it, his life would be gnawed away. Even though it wouldn't cause any illness or side effects, his lifespan would reduce tremendously. Unless he made up his mind to exact vengeance for the other party. Of course, Xianxia wouldn't say these words out loud. Putting aside the fact that he had barely met Apothecary Chen Xiao and wasn't indebted to him, more importantly, the other party was an ungrateful person. He made promises but didn't fulfill them. Xianxia despised these kinds of people. After consecutively getting 2 apothecaries to admit defeat, none of the other examiners volunteered to take him on. No matter how foolish the other 8 were, it was clear at this point that Xianxia was someone with true ability. For a long time, the entire hall was silent and no one dared to step forward. If none of you wish to continue the pill debate, please admit defeat and declare me the victor. Xianxia smiled. Tranquil Heart Pill requires your heart to be calm to forge. Under usual circumstances, you need to adjust your state of mind for 3 days through consuming vegetarian meals and cleansing yourself with water. Given how they had to forge the pill out of a sudden without making the necessary adjustments in their state of mind, it is natural that the pills they forged would be affected by their emotions. As long as we avoid forging such pills, he should be unable to point out any flaws. Indeed. Only the forging of Tranquil Heart Pill is affected by your emotions and state of mind. The effects of such for other pills are minimal, so it will do as long as we do not forge Tranquil Heart Pills. Muttering broke out among the crowd and soon a voice rang out. I will face him. An apothecary stood up. It was a middle-aged man about the same age as Du Man. He had a square-shaped face and his eyes shone with determination and calm. It's Apothecary Cheng Jiang. He is the apothecary who possesses the greatest potential among us all. Just within 3 years of becoming an apothecary, he was already able to forge more than a dozen kinds of pills. With sufficient time, there is a high possibility of him surpassing guild leader Ouyang. Nothing will go wrong since he's the one making the move. The eyes of the crowd lit up. Initially, everyone was resolute to pulling this Xianxia lad off his high horse. Yet 2 apothecaries, Meng Yang and Xianxia, who challenged him had fallen to him. This struck a blow at their confidence and they urgently needed someone to boost their morale. Xianxia, you were able to notice the slightest details in the previous 2 clashes, to the point of even discerning an apothecary's vitality, emotional state, and mental state. I am impressed. Walking out, Apothecary Cheng Jiang nodded his head in approval with a smile. I am unworthy of your praise. Xianxia replied. You were even able to discern the killing intent from Apothecary Meng Yang. If I were to forge a Tranquil Heart Pill, my flaws would surely be unable to escape from your notice. Thus, if I may propose presumptuously, I would like to increase the difficulty of the challenge. I wonder if you're brave enough to accept. Apothecary Cheng Jiang said. I am willing to listen to the details. Upon hearing that the other party wanted to increase the difficulty of the challenge, Xianxia looked interested. I have just created a new pill forging technique and come up with a name for it a few days ago. I have not displayed it to anyone before. If I gave this problem to you, even if you are learned in all methods that have existed since immemorial times, you will surely find it hard to answer. Apothecary Cheng Jiang said. Thus, I contemplated and decided against having you give the name of my technique. As long as you can name 3 pill forging techniques I referenced from, I am willing to admit defeat. Creating a new pill forging technique? Incredible. Pill forging techniques were similar to the battle techniques of a fighter. Those who could create one of their own were definitely talented individuals, people who left their mark on history. As long as they did not burn out before their time was up, it was just a matter of time before they made a name for themselves. Upon hearing his words, the other apothecaries looked at him, full of admiration. Apothecary Cheng Shaw is remarkable. This question is truly difficult. Indeed. Since it is a brand new pill forging technique, it is bound to be different from the originals. Compared to pointing out the flaws in pill forging techniques, to identify the references in a newly created pill forging technique, 3 at that, the difficulty is much greater. This time, Xianxia will most probably be defeated. Of course, this is such a difficult question. Even a 3-star apothecary would be stumped by it, much less an apprentice apothecary. The crowd couldn't help but lament Xianxia's predicament. In some Chinese religions and culture, eating meat can be considered to be a sin due to the bloodshed resulted in its production. Sometimes it's associated with state of mind. Those who consume meat tend to be more short-tempered, whereas those who consume vegetarian meals tend to be calmer. Chapter 113. Forging technique. Telling the references from a complete pill forging technique using an analogy was like creating a solution of water from numerous wells and demanding for another to identify the origin of the water. It was an impossible task. Unless one witnessed him creating the pill forging technique step by step, it would be impossible to identify 3 references. The difficulty of the task Cheng Jiang proposed, compared to simply finding the flaws in a pill forging technique, was at least 5 times harder. Zhong Xian's eyes narrowed. As expected of the apothecaries, they weren't as easy to deal with as he expected. This fellow might be a bundle of smiles and look magnanimous. However, he was truly the most shameless of the group. Even if Zhong Xian agreed, identifying the references in a pill forging technique was basically an impossible task. Given how Zhong Xian raised the difficulty earlier, the privilege should be extended to the other party as well. If he disagreed with it, other people might criticize him because of that in the future, thus leaving a stain on his reputation. Why? I know that this is a difficult matter to ask, and it is normal that you will reject me. However, if you reject my offer, can I consider it your loss? Cheng Jiang grinned widely. Loss? Zhong Xian shook his head. It just happens that I would like to see Apothecary Cheng's new forging technique. Let's begin. This method of his would normally be effective against other people, making them fly into a panic. However, it was ineffective against Zhong Xian. The reason why Zhong Xian could identify flaws in the pill forging techniques of others wasn't because of his discernment ability. Rather, it was because he possessed the library of Heaven's Path. As long as the library remained with him, regardless of whatever forging technique, whether it was just created or yet to be created, they would all be clearly displayed in the form of a book. This was no problem for him at all. All right. Seeing him agree to it, a gleam flashed across Apothecary Cheng Jiang's eyes. The corners of his lips crept upwards as he gathered the necessary medicinal herbs and headed to the cauldron. Hualala! The medicinal herbs flew in the air. His every action was fluid and elegant. Looking it from afar, there was a unique sense of aesthetics to it. It is indeed a new forging technique. I have never seen it before. If I'm not mistaken, he is forging Jushi pill. Yes. Jushi pill is useful to people of cultivation realms below Fighter 7 Dan. It is exceptionally useful for those in the Jushi realm. It isn't a valuable pill in comparison to the others, but it is one of the most useful ones to the fighters. Usually, this is the pill apprentice apothecaries will practice for the pill forging examination. As such, most apothecaries are extremely familiar with the method to forging it. This is also the reason why Apothecary Cheng Jiang is able to better showcase the uniqueness of his forging technique. Furthermore, his motions are more fluid, making it difficult for others to discern the references. In any case, I am unable to tell the pill forging techniques he referenced from. Me neither. The apothecaries watched Cheng Jiang for a moment before shaking their heads. Apothecary Cheng sure is vicious. Standing by the side, Ouyang Cheng shook his head. Given his standard as a 1-star apothecary, he is able to forge the most basic Jushi pill easily with fluid motions, making it difficult for others to discern the forging method easily. Furthermore, given the short time required to forge it, you couldn't analyze it even if you wanted to. Looks like Zhong Xian will probably fail here. Apothecary Cheng Jiang could forge more difficult grade 1 pills, but it would be troublesome for him. He couldn't forge them as easily as he could the Jushi pill. This was just like how Yang Guo could wield the heavy iron sword, but he was unable to control it as freely as he wished. On the other hand, if he forged the most basic Jushi pill, it was like Yang Guo wielding an ordinary sword instead effortless. This apothecary Cheng Jiang may have had a wide smile on his face, but he was actually the most scheming of them all. Not only were his movements fast in forging Jushi pill, the time required to forge it was also short. A normal grade 1 pill would take at least half an hour to forge. On the other hand, Jushi pill could be forged in less than 15 minutes. Seeing 3 references in such a short period of time? How was that possible? It was clear that he is intended to do in Zhong Xian. Is he going to fail? Upon hearing Ouyang Cheng's judgment, Wen Shui clenches her fists tightly. It should be difficult for him to pass this test. Ouyang Cheng sighed. Interesting. Initially, he didn't bear any ill intent for this Cheng Jiang. However, he didn't expect this fellow to be so despicable and use such low-handed methods. Zhong Xian's gaze turned icy. As a cultured, knowledgeable, ambitious, and worldly transcender. How could he allow others to bully him without trying to retaliate? Who? Finally, the Jushi pill was successfully forged. A total of 7 or 8 pills rolled out from the cauldron. I am done forging. Xianxia, please. Apothecary Cheng Jiang looked at him and chuckled with confidence. It was true that his forging technique had more than 3 references to other forging techniques. However, his movements just now were extremely fast and fluid. It was almost an impossible task for the other party to see through any of them. Besides, even if the other party was right, he could deny it. There are so many forging techniques, and naturally, given how no one here could see through the references behind his forging technique, it was up to him to say whatever he wanted. For a brat who came from some remote corner to use me as a stepping stone to achieve victory in the pill debate. Dream on. If I can point out 3 references in your forging technique, will you admit defeat? Xianxia looked at him with a hint of amusement in his eyes. Of course. I am an official apothecary. Given my standing, there is no reason I would go back on my words just to deal with an apprentice apothecary. Apothecary Cheng Jiang flung his sleeves haughtily. Arrogance exuded from his tone. Great. Since you have put it like that, then this matter is simple. Xianxia nodded his head and walked forward. He circled around the cauldron once before lowering his head to look at the Jushi pill in his hand. He pinched one and held it up, placed it before his nose, and took a whiff of its scent. This Jushi pill has vibrant colors and a radiant outer appearance. Going by conventional standards, it should have already reached perfection. Xianxia complimented. However, his tone abruptly changed. However, due to the limitations of Apothecary Cheng's forging technique, perfection is already the limit. It is impossible for him to forge an inscribed pill. It is just a Jushi pill. What's the use of forging an inscribed pill? Apothecary Cheng Jiang scoffed. This Jushi pill was the most basic pill an apothecary could forge. It increased the rate at which a fighter could gather spiritual energy from the surroundings. It was a waste of an inscribed pill to occur in this kind of fundamental pill. That's true. Xianxia nodded his head, reluctant to tug with him on this matter. Instead, he smiled and continued, the question I should answer is with regards to your forging technique. There is no point debating this topic. All right, since it's a request on your part, I will answer your question. Putting aside the forging techniques you have referenced previously, let's first talk about how many forging techniques you know. With this, it should be easier to conclude which are the few forging techniques you referenced from. 3 years ago, Apothecary Cheng Jiang used Rain of 10,000 Streams to forge a Grade 1 Vitality Rejuvenation pill to pass the apothecary examinations. In the same year, you learned Convergence of the North River and successfully forged Soul Soothing Pill. The spring of the 2nd year, during Apothecary by Ming's birthday celebration, you sneaked into his study and coped his illusory silk hands with which you forged Body Nourishment Pill. From then on, your reputation spread far and wide. That winter, when you asked Apothecary Lin Mu to demonstrate his frost-threaded hands, you secretly took it for yourself. In the summer last year, you spent 50,000 gold coins to bribe Apothecary Jin Chen's butler to duplicate a copy of Golden Spring Fleeting Cloud Dexterity. In the 3rd month of last year, you enticed Du Man's apothecary apprentice Zhu Huahua and obtained Apothecary Du's personal forging technique 100 intertwining method. Now, if I added them up, Rain of 10,000 Streams, Convergence of the North River. Summing together all of these forging techniques, there are a total of 12 of them. Xianxia counted slowly as though counting his own precious treasures. After that, he turned around to look at the apothecary whose face had paled at some point. Apothecary Cheng Jiang, are there any mistakes with what I said? You. Cheng Jiang stumbled backward. His eyes narrowed, as though he had seen a freak. Yang Guo is a character from Return of the Condor Heroes by Jin Yong. In the novel, after his hand was chopped off by Guo Fu, he was saved by a condor and chances upon the grave of a great swordsman, Du Gu Choubai. There are 4 swords there, one of them being the heavy iron sword. The sword is known for being extremely heavy and difficult to utilize in battle. Yang Guo took a long time before he managed to gain control of it. Chapter 114. Convergence of 10,000 Tributaries. What? Cheng Jiang, is what he said true? I demonstrated the skill to you out of kindness, and you secretly picked up my frost-threaded hands. Damn it, no wonder I wasn't able to find you for a long time after the banquet started. Confess, when did you sneak into my study? Cheng Jiang, we are fellow apothecaries. If you wish to learn my forging technique, you could have asked me sincerely for it and I might have taught it to you. Yet you chose to entice my apprentice with benefits to obtain my 100 intertwining method. Aren't you being too underhanded? A pill forging technique was similar to a fighter's battle techniques. Most of them were exclusive to a certain clan or sect and mustn't be taught to outsiders lightly. This Cheng Jiang actually secretly learned the forging techniques of other apothecaries without their permission, even resorting to stealing to obtain them. Upon hearing Zhong Xian's words, the entire room burst into outrage. Everyone here was a member of the Apothecary Guild and they often exchanged knowledge on the art of pill forging. If he was truly interested in learning their pill forging method, he could indicate his interest, conduct a ceremony to acknowledge the other party as his mentor, and learn their skills. Then their relationship could be annulled and they would still be friends. However, secretly learning in this manner was akin to a fighter stealing the battle techniques of other experts. It was a huge taboo that one should never commit. Everyone, don't listen to his nonsense. Sensing the heated atmosphere, anger and fear flashed across Cheng Jiang's face as he hurriedly tried to absolve himself from the accusations. I'm spouting nonsense. Zhong Xian walked forward. The corners of his lips crept upwards. Just now, to forge Jushi pill, Apothecary Cheng took a total of 23 medicinal herbs. I shouldn't be mistaken on this aspect. You're right. All certified apothecaries were aware of the medicinal herbs required to forge Jushi pill. This wasn't a secret, thus there was no need to deny it. When you mixed white lotus grass, wisteria root, and golden river flower together, your pinky was angled backward whereas the tip was bent forward, as though picking a flower. If I'm not wrong, this method is referenced from Apothecary by Ming's illusory silk hands. Afterwards, when you extracted the green sun essence, your 5 fingers opened wide with which you gently stroked the herb, as though extracting frigid air from ice, not daring to exert too much strength. This should be referenced from Apothecary Lin Mu's frost-threaded hands. Then, when you added purple almond grass and white manet flower in, to prevent the properties of the two from clashing with one another, you specially circled them twice around the cauldron before throwing them in. Through doing so, not only would the medicinal properties of both be better utilized, they would only lose their violent nature. As such, their properties would not clash with one another. Apothecary Jin Chen's Golden Spring Fleeting Cloud dexterity seems identical to this move of yours. After that, when the pill was forged, in order to prevent it from coming into contact with the searing cauldron, you used Xianxia to produce a unique air net with your hands. Even though your movements are inconspicuous, if someone watches closely, they are still recognizable. Apothecary Du Man, isn't that similar to your 100 intertwining method? Zhong Xian didn't allow the other party to refute his words at all, dumping it all out en masse. At this point, he paused for a moment as he smiled brightly. If Apothecary Cheng thinks what that I just said is nonsense and that I made it all up, the record crystal has been recording the entire procedure and we can look through it anytime. Everyone can bear testimony to whether the words I've been saying are nonsense. You. Cheng Jiang's face paled and his entire body trembled uncontrollably. He knew that what the other party said was completely true. Apothecaries had their own schools and inheritances. In order to improve swiftly, he went around stealing other people's techniques. He thought that he had done it very secretly. How did this fellow know? Furthermore, down to the very details. In an instant, he felt like he was standing nude before everyone else. A deep feeling of fear rose from the depths of his heart. What? Do you still think I'm spouting nonsense? Ignoring the other party whose face had paled to the extreme at this moment, Zhong Xian stepped forward. If you think there's any mistake in what I've said, is this forging technique that you self-created through merging everyone's forging techniques called convergence of 10,000 tributaries? You're a demon. Apothecary Cheng Jiang staggered and fell to the floor. The name he had come up with for this forging technique was indeed convergence of 10,000 tributaries. It was a name he had come up with a few days ago, and he had yet to tell anyone about it. In fact, not even his apprentices knew of it. So why does the other party know the name? To be able to see through everything down to the very details, such that him stealing the other people's forging technique was unable to escape his eyes. Was this fellow a demon? How can this be? Apothecary Cheng Jiang was terrified. Convergence of 10,000 tributaries. You utilized all of the different techniques to forge that river of yours. How arrogant. It sure is an incredible forging technique. To steal our forging techniques, integrate them together as one and claim that you have created a new forging technique. Cheng Jiang, you sure are capable. To think that I've regarded you as my brother and my best buddy, yet you chose to do this to me. Fine. From now on, our relationship is severed. Upon seeing the expression on Cheng Jiang's face and recalling the movements he made while forging the pill recently, they would truly be fools if they were still unable to understand the situation. The faces of the apothecaries here turned red in fury. Their wrathful eyes fixated on Cheng Jiang. They weren't exceptionally skilled apothecaries, and their forging techniques were not really secrets that must not be leaked to the outside. But this fellow, if he had expressed his desire to learn their techniques, getting rejected wasn't really a big deal. However, his actions of learning their techniques behind their back was definitely something an apothecary should never do. Not only that, he had even arrogantly bragged that he had created a new technique by himself. Created? Your head. You simply took all of our techniques to form a hodgepodge. You call that creating a new technique? If that's so, everyone would be creating new techniques every day. Not to mention, naming it convergence of 10,000 tributaries. How can anyone be that shameless? At this point, they no longer viewed Cheng Jiang as their equal. Disgust was the only thing that could be seen on their faces. Please calm down. Upon seeing the indignation of the crowd, Zhong Xian smiled. He interjected into their commotion and turned to look at Cheng Jiang, who was still in a state of disbelief. Apothecary Cheng Jiang, is this considered my victory? You. Seeing his smile, Apothecary Cheng Jiang shuddered. You win. I admit defeat. He has no choice but to admit defeat. The other party's ability to discern had already reached the level of demons. He feared that if he continued competing with him, more of his secrets would be revealed. As such, he could only hurriedly nod his head. At this moment, he regretted his action of intentionally making things difficult for the other party. Even though the other party had pointed out the flaws in Meng Yang and Chen Xiao's pill forging, he had clearly spared their dignity. Yet he sent a slap directly at his face, exposing his darkest secret in public. It was foreseeable that once news of these matters spread, he would lose his standing within Qianxian Kingdom's apothecary guild. He would be shunned and viewed with contempt by all. All credibility and reputation he had built up throughout the years would be completely destroyed, and others would just think of him as a fraud and villain. Upon his surrender, Zhong Xian smiled. Initially, he didn't have any serious conflict with any of them, so he couldn't be bothered with the other party's personality flaws. Yet, this fellow tried to take advantage of the situation to force him into a corner. You want to humiliate me? Try it then. As a transcender with a golden ring, how can I allow myself to be humiliated by you like this? Since you decided to charge straight at me, don't blame me for not going easy on you. It just happens that I can use you to warn the others that I, Zhong Xian, am not an easy target. Apothecary Cheng has admitted defeat. Zhong Xian surveyed the surroundings. Anyone else? In that instant, the room fell utterly silent. Chapter 115. Acupoint Soothing Pill. Even though the person in front of them had only pointed out the flaws in the pill forging techniques of 3 apothecaries, the abilities he had revealed in doing so induced fear and terror in the remaining few. Not just them, even Cheng Jiang's swift and fluid actions factoring in the short duration he took to forge the pill were clearly seen through by Zhong Xian, who had also analyzed the origin of his movements, and deduced that he had stolen the forging techniques of others. That ability of discernment and knowledge of his was something none of the people here could match up to. 3 apothecaries have admitted defeat, 7 more to go. Who will go first? Seeing all of them silence, Zhong Xian continued to stare at them. Pill debate required 10 apothecaries to admit their defeat before Xianxia could be declared victorious. This silence continued to linger about the remaining 7 apothecaries. It was one thing if the other party's ability to discern matters was impressive, but of the 3 apothecaries he faced previously, one was exposed for being cuckolded, one turned out to be on the verge of death, and the last one had his reputation tarnished. They were only here for the pill debate. They didn't want their secrets exposed because of this. The other party's ability to discern was so incredible that he could immediately tell a difference if their state of mind was in the slightest bit off. Given such circumstances, who would still dare to challenge him? Furthermore, they couldn't admit defeat without competing in pill debate. If they did so, it was equivalent to going easy on the other party, which was considered as an act of cheating. Once revealed, they would be stripped of their apothecary qualification. As such, the awkward silence continued to linger in the atmosphere as no one dared to step forward. Please hurry up, we can't possibly continue to drag this matter on like this. Sensing the awkward atmosphere lingering about, Xianxia couldn't help saying, I'll go. After a momentary silence, Apothecary Duman stood up. He was acquainted with Xianxia and had even bet over him. What he thought to be an arrogant fellow turned out to be a figure with incredible capability and outstanding discernment ability. Even he himself was far from a match for him in this aspect. However, he didn't have a choice either way. After all, they couldn't continue stalling time here like this. Apothecary Duman, allow me to go instead. Just as Duman was about to start forging so that Xianxia could point out the flaws in the process, an elder stood up. It's Apothecary by Ming. Just now, Xianxia exposed that Cheng Jiang had secretly learned his illusory silk hands. He was extremely furious. Why would he make a move now? I have no idea. Let's watch. Upon seeing this elder, the others shuddered. Even though Apothecary by Ming wasn't the oldest of the group, he was the most qualified and respected one. That was because he wasn't just a mere apothecary, he was also the de facto head of one of the 4 great clans in Xianxia City, the Bai clan. He was a person who held great authority and strength in his hands. Since Apothecary Bai is going to make a move, I'll back down first. Apothecary Duman returned to his seat. He was unable to match up to Bai Ming in terms of qualifications and standing. Xianxia, you possess incredible ability of discernment and analysis. However, you just happen to be lucky. In actuality, you don't really possess much knowledge on pill forging. After the examiner had been confirmed, Bai Ming glanced at Xianxia, his tone hostile. It was no wonder that he was so angry. While he was angry at Cheng Jiang for stealing the secret manual passed down within his family, being exposed in public also made him feel humiliated. After all, it was shameful for the powerful Bai clan to be unable to prevent a lone apothecary from stealing from them. If word spread, the Bai clan would become a laughingstock. Lucky. Why would Apothecary Bai say that? Xianxia was taken aback. Simple. Regardless of whether it was Meng Yang, Chen Xiao, or Cheng Jiang, the flaws you said may seem to make sense. However, if we think deeper into things, it was also possible for you to have investigated their personality flaws and the recent happenings around them beforehand, and worked backward to infer the flaws in their forging techniques. Bai Ming harumphed. Worked backward. Now that Apothecary Bai said so, it does make sense. Indeed. For example, in Meng Yang's case, if you knew he killed his concubine in the morning in advance and that he had killing intent and rage within him, you could safely deduce that the tranquil heart pill he forged would be ineffective. The same for Apothecary Chen Xiao as well. If you knew he was sick and didn't have much time to live, you could infer that there would be a problem with the pills. After all, the tranquil heart pill reflects the forger's state of mind. Even a pig could tell that something would be wrong with those pills if it had heard of that information beforehand. Now that you all have put it in such a way, it truly explains a lot of things. If he had made preparations beforehand and dug up the matter of Cheng Jiang stealing our forging techniques, it would be a simple matter to guess the references in his forging technique. Bai Ming's words were like a rock thrown in water, generating countless ripples on the surface. Everyone came to a realization, seemingly understanding what had just happened. It was because they were unable to understand how the other party was able to see through those flaws that they felt fear. Now that they understood the reason, the fear they felt vanished. In fact, if they of this information beforehand, they could also make the same judgment that Xianxia did on the flaws of the forging techniques of the previous 3. Oh, working backward? What an interesting thought. He didn't expect Apothecary by Ming's imagination to be so vivid. Smirking, Xianxia continued, regardless of what methods I used, I can pass as long as I can identify the flaws in your forging techniques. Indeed. It will be your win if you manage to see through the flaws in my forging technique. However, I want to change the rules as well. Apothecary by Ming said. Oh. The gist of it will still be the same. I will forge a pill while you identify a mistake in my forging technique. However, I want you to point out true mistakes in my forging process, such as in my skills, ability to control flames, and the way I mix the medicinal herbs together rather than involving emotions and other miscellaneous stuff. This way, you can't use the knowledge you know of beforehand to work backward to identify the flaws in my forging technique. By Ming harumphed. That's right. This way, he won't be able to talk about emotions and the sort. With these rules, he can't work backward to deduce the flaws even if he wants to. This is what I call pointing out flaws. The apothecaries nodded their heads in agreement. To speak the truth, everyone had been frightened by Xianxia's ability to point out the flaws in them. As a cultivator, charging forward and emerging victorious among millions of people, who hadn't done anything against their conscience before, it would be embarrassing if this lad were to reveal their darkest secrets. Thus, the new rule that Apothecary by Ming came up with immediately received everyone's approval. He was only allowed to point out flaws in pill forging. Bringing in external matters such as murder or being on the verge of death was prohibited. Even if they were apothecaries, such scares weren't what humans could handle. Are you certain? Upon hearing the rules set by the other party, how could Xianxia possibly remain oblivious to what they were thinking? One corner of Xianxia's mouth curved upwards. Of course. Apothecary by Ming flung his sleeves. Now, it is a question of whether you're brave enough to accept the challenge. Xianxia could not be bothered to argue with him over the matter. Great. Seeing him agree to it, Apothecary by Ming heaved a sigh of relief. After pondering for a moment, he grabbed a few ingredients and walked to the cauldron. Fwoosh boosh. The fire started burning furiously and Apothecary by Ming began his pill forging. Not too long after, the fire weakened and 3 round pills were extracted from the cauldron. Grade 1 pill, Acupoint Soothing Pill. It was specially prepared for Fighter 6 Dan experts to soothe their acupoints, allowing them to travel further in the Pishua realm. Back then, Elder Xianxia spent a huge price to purchase one for Xiangbin. The latter gave it to the Sky-Shattering Lion as the cost of teaching Xianxia a lesson. Even so, the Sky-Shattering Lion eventually betrayed him, filling Xiangbin with resentment against it. No matter what, the Acupoint Soothing Acupoint was considered one of the superior Grade 1 pills, something that Tranquil Heart Pill was far from matching up to. Chapter 116, Apothecary by Ming's Breakdown Amazing. Only Apothecary by Ming possesses such capabilities. To think that he could successfully forge an Acupoint Soothing Pill under such circumstances. It is extremely difficult to forge an Acupoint Soothing Pill. Even more so, Apothecary by Ming's forging technique is so complex that I have never seen it before. Now I am curious to see what Xianxia will say. Let's wait for the show then. Upon seeing Apothecary by Ming forging an Acupoint Soothing Pill, most of the apothecaries present laughed. The higher grade a pill was, the more complex the method required to forge it. Acupoint Soothing Pill could be considered one of the higher grade pills among the Grade 1 tier and its forging method was incomparably complex. Even the rest of them were unable to perceive any mistakes in his forging technique, so how could an apprentice possibly see anything? Alright, I'm done forging the pill. Tell me, what's the name of the forging technique and the flaws in it? Sneering, Apothecary by Ming brought his breathing back to normal and gestured grandly. Even though I don't know where you got the information on us, but if you wish to successfully pass a pill debate depending solely on that, dream on. Without true capability to point out the flaws in a forging technique, you will never earn my respect. Are you sure you want me to say? A peculiar expression appeared on Xianxia's face as he said those words. Quit trying to mystify things here. If you can't find the words, just admit defeat. Apothecary by Ming harumphed. All right then. Xianxia shook his head. With his hands behind his back, he slowly walked to the center of the room. The forging technique you used is called Thousand Mountain Hands and is said to have been created by a 2-star apothecary named Feng Xian. You must put the medicinal herb into the cauldron based on a special sequence, similar to the mountainous regions, one mountain after another like you're traversing the lands. Similarly, you throw the medicinal herbs in wave after wave. The way you control the fire is also based on such a sequence, strong at one moment, weak at the other. By forging pills in such a method, it is easier for the medicinal properties to fuse together and thus makes it likelier that a pill is formed. However, its flaws are also clear to see. It's difficult to raise the quality of the pill itself. Therefore, even though you manage to forge 3 acupoint soothing pills successfully, they are of the lowest level. It is nearly impossible for you to reach satiation. Such forging techniques are only suitable for the mass production of pills by low-skilled apothecaries. Put bluntly, none of the slightly better apothecaries would learn such a skill, because it means putting a barrier in front of their future path. No matter how many times you practice the skill, it is impossible to raise the quality of the pill in the slightest. As a result, there is no reason for them to learn it. Unless you don't think that you have any potential left in you, that's why you are giving up on yourself. Xianxia smiled and shot a meaningful glance at him. Apothecary by Ming, may I know if what I said is true? HMPH. Upon hearing the words of the other party, Bai Ming gritted his teeth, embarrassed and angry. As the de facto head of the Bai clan, as well as a 1-star apothecary, he possessed exceptional standing in the capital. Yet, by the words of the other party, he became an apothecary with low standards, no more potential left. However, he was unable to refute his words. The flaw of the 1,000 Mountain Hands was exactly as the other party said. Even though he was able to produce the acupoint soothing pill easily, it was difficult for him to further refine its quality. You don't need to feel gleeful over this. So what if you can point out these? You need to point out the errors in my movements previously before it can be considered your victory. Taking a deep breath, Bai Ming suppressed his anger. All right. Instead of arguing with him, Xianxia stepped forward and walked toward the cauldron. Then allow me to start from the very basics. As long as you are an apothecary, you know that you require incredible control over the flame and the cauldron to produce high-quality pills. Earlier, Apothecary Bai Ming started forging his pills right after picking up the medicine. How much do you know about this cauldron? What about the flames? You don't need to refute my words by saying that the specifications of these cauldrons are roughly the same. I can clearly tell you that even with the same medicinal herb, flames, and cauldron, the medicine you forge can be different. This is due to a minuscule difference or a tiny mistake made by the apothecary that the pills forged will be a quality lower than what it should be. His hands stroking the cauldron, Xianxia continued, if you don't believe me, I can show you now. This cauldron has a height of 7 kai and 3 kun and width of 3 kun and 2 kai. It was created by a 3-mo craftsman in the Stonewell workshop 7 years and 3 months ago. A total of 147 pills have been forged using an of it, of which 88 were grade 1 pills and 59 were pills lower than grade 1. During the transportation of the cauldron, it suffered 3 impacts. There are a total of 13 slight scratches throughout the entire cauldron. It won't cause too much trouble when forging ordinary pills, but it will scatter the medicinal effects and spiritual energy within the pill. As such, due to the insufficient medicinal effects harnessed within the pill, the quality of the pill will drop. 1 Kai GT 30.3 cm, 1 Kun GT 3.03 cm. This cauldron is slightly thicker than a kun and it requires an incense's time and 34 breaths for the heat to completely permeate the cauldron. Also, the thickness of the cauldron walls on the left and right are slightly different, around 3 hair strands off. Don't underestimate the difference in this thickness. With the same flames, there will be a 5% difference in the temperature between both sides. The medicinal effects of scattered floral grass and lone-eyed dragon grass of the acupoint soothing pill will be completely different when placed on either side. Are you for real? There is even such a thing for a cauldron. Upon listening to Xianxia's casual explanations, the jaws of the apothecaries fell to the floor and they felt like they were going insane. Even though they knew that a difference in the cauldron could result in the formation of different pills, never did they imagine that there was such wisdom behind a cauldron. Furthermore, this was a cauldron that the apothecary guild brought in specially for this pill debate. How did he know so much about it? To even know where it was made, how thick the walls were, its size and how many pills it had forged. The heck, you are about to bash through the heavens. To see all these with a single glance, are you a monster? All right, I will continue to talk about the flames then. Ignoring the astonished expression on everyone's faces, Xianxia pointed to the flames burning beneath the cauldron and continued. This is where the heat of the heavenly coal originates from, as well as the hottest part. With the heat here, even metal could be easily melted. By propelling it with a fighter's Xianxia, you can easily control the strength of the flames and thus the temperature of the cauldron. However, the flames do not come into direct contact with the medicinal herbs. They are placed in the cauldron, and in there, they form pills. How much heat from the flames permeates through the cauldron walls and how much of it is left in the cauldron is what we need to grasp clearly in our minds. Heavenly coal is a coal exceptionally suited for forging pills. Not only is it capable of reaching high temperatures, the permeability of its heat is also incredible. For normal coal, after permeating through a ton of cauldron walls or so, only 37% of the heat will be retained. On the other hand, the heavenly coal retains 46%. Only by knowing this much can you ascertain the temperature the medicinal herbs inside are under, how long it will take for the medicinal properties of the herbs to be best unleashed, and how you can forge the highest quality pill. Of course, these are only the bare basics that an apothecary needs to know, so they can't be considered as flaws. I am just casually introducing them. Xianxia smiled and glanced at Bai Ming standing off to the side. However, I would like to ask Apothecary Bai Ming, before forging the pills, did you notice these? Apothecary Bai Ming felt his hair standing on end and he almost fainted on the spot. Notice? Notice your head. I am just forging a normal pill. Given how complicated these things are, how the heck would I know? Besides, even if I had been concerned with them, there was nothing I could do. You can't expect me to find a ruler and start measuring the entire cauldron before testing the temperature of the coal bit by bit. If I started doing so, it would be 2 days before I could start forging. Chapter 117. Apothecary Bai Ming's breakdown. He felt stifled within, but Bai Ming also knew that he was unable to refute Xianxia's words. It was the basics to check the cauldron and flames of the cauldron before forging pills. Even apprentices were aware of it. His action of going straight to forging was clearly a huge mistake. Using the words in Xianxia's previous world, if a person didn't buckle their seatbelt, check the tires, and scan the surroundings before starting to drive, they couldn't refute anything if an accident occurred. Right now, that was the emotion Bai Ming was experiencing. Lectured by an apprentice apothecary in public, yet unable to refute anything at all. It was clear just by thinking of how stifled he was at this moment. All right, now that I have touched on the cauldron and the flames, I shall talk about the fusing of the medicinal herbs. Knowing that the other party would be unable to reply to his words, Xianxia could not be bothered to continue interrogating him over those mistakes of his. Instead, he walked over to the medicinal racks. Acupoint Soothing Pill requires a total of 47 types of herbs. Given the number of herbs that are involved in the forging process, there are herbs that complement one another, as well as herbs that clash with one another. As such, if you don't control the process properly, it is very easy for the medicinal herb to clash with one another and the pill will be ruined. Let me first talk about Apothecary Bai Ming's forging sequence. The first herb he put in was heart grass. Heart grass has calming properties and is resilient to high temperature. As such, it requires strong flames to extract its essence. It is correct to place it into the cauldron first so that it can come into contact with the flames earlier to incite its medicinal properties. However, 7 breaths after placing heart grass in, he placed in the second herb, split palm flower. If I'm not wrong, that heart grass he took was only half a year old. As such, its medicinal properties are not strong enough and most of it was concentrated on the leaves instead of the meridians. For such a herb, the medicinal effects will be swiftly released upon meeting strong flames. Under normal situations, he should have placed split palm flour in after 4 breaths. Yet, he delayed it 3 entire breaths, causing a loss in the medicinal effect by 13%. Fail. On the other hand, split palm flour has a maturity of 5 years and the medicinal effects of it is relatively stronger. He should have slowly released the split palm flowers by the left wall of the cauldron, and the duration of its descent should be roughly half a breath. During this time, the heart of the cauldron would unleash the medicinal effects of it, allowing it to better mix with heartgrass. However, apothecary by Ming threw the medicinal herb straight at it, depriving it of the opportunity to be heated by the cauldron in advance. As such, its medicinal effect wasn't fully unleashed and 14% of the medicinal effect was lost. Fail. The medicinal effects of these 2 herbs clash with one another, so he should have quickly placed in scattered floral grass, which has a pacifying effect for the 2. Yet he threw in the violent lone-eyed dragon grass, worsening the clash between the 2 herbs. As such, 11% of the medicinal effect was lost. Fail. The lone-eyed dragon grass is a herb with yang properties. After placing it into the scorching cauldron, he should have added cooling grass to counteract its effects. Yet apothecary by Ming added wisdom mother grass instead. Wisdom mother grass is able to neutralize all medicinal herbs, and as such, it is the best choice to serve as a medium between herbs. However, it is precisely because of that it completely neutralized the yang properties of the lone-eyed dragon grass, greatly reducing the medicinal effect of the acupoint smoothing pill. Fail. 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 Xianxia spoke faster and faster, akin to a machine gun. His every word was logical with evidence to back them up. Every single failure struck like a hammer on apothecary by Ming's face. His face grew paler and paler and his body trembled uncontrollably. Pill forging was by no means simple. Even with the same herbs, if the maturity was different, it could have different medicinal properties. Not to mention, an apothecary needed to pair them together in a way that complemented them to mix them together and such. Even for a single acupoint soothing pill, 3 days wouldn't be enough if Xianxia were to go in depth. This was also the reason why apothecaries were one of the frontrunners in the upper 9 paths. Everything he said is true. To recall the sequence in which apothecary by Ming added the 47 medicinal herbs with a single look. What kind of memorization ability does he possess? The most shocking thing isn't him remembering the sequence in which the medicinal herbs were placed in. It is that he was able to tell the maturity of every single medicinal herb and come up with a method to complement them so as to best unleash its medicinal effects. Is he really human? Now that I've heard his words, an apothecary really has to take a lot of factors into account. It is no wonder that my pills are unable to reach perfection or inscribed pill. So this is the reason. Upon hearing Xianxia's words, everyone became mute. It was as though their heads had been smashed with a bat, their mouths agape and their eyes wide. The heck? This is what you call pill forging. What we were doing before was simply wasting herbs and insulting this occupation. Most probably, if they were to use the method he spoke of to forge this pill, the pill would be able to reach higher heights. Perfection and even inscribed pill wouldn't be problems. This was no longer a theory that a 1-star apothecary could come into contact with. Only the more advanced apothecaries would pay attention to such minute details. Everyone was dumbfounded. At this moment, the thought of suicide even ran through apothecary by Ming's head. Listening to the words of the other party, his entire pill forging sequence was a failure. How could this be considered pill forging? He must be forging feces instead. Furthermore, at least when one forges feces, they don't waste any materials. Yet, when he forged a pill, he wasted all of the medicinal herbs used in it. Pu. The stifling sensation in his chest grew heavier and heavier, and he puked a mouthful of blood. All along, he thought of himself as talented in pill forging, and that he was truly a highly skilled apothecary. Yet, upon hearing the words of the other party, he realized that his standards couldn't even match up to that of a child's. All of the confidence he held in the past was completely shattered. The current him feared to even approach a cauldron now. His body trembled violently. Just a moment ago, he stood up proudly and determinedly to punish Xianxia for his humiliation. Yet, at this moment, his complexion was turning more and more awful, as though he were going berserk. A moment later, he gritted his teeth. That's right. Given my standards, what kind of pills can I possibly forge? All I'm doing is wasting medicinal herbs. From today onward, I, Bai Ming, will not forge a single pill anymore. If I break this vow, let the heavens tear me apart. A vow resounded in the hall. What? He vowed not to forge a single pill anymore. Apothecary Bai Ming. Upon hearing the vow he made, everyone was flabbergasted. They couldn't help but shudder, upset at the thought of the loss of a comrade. For an apothecary to vow to never forge a single pill anymore was equivalent to bidding the world of pill forging farewell. The effort he had put in for his entire life had all gone to waste. And the reason for that was a mere apprentice apothecary pointing out the flaws in his pill forging process. Isn't he being too rash? An apothecary couldn't help but comment. If you were criticized like that, what would you do? Another apothecary responded. I. The former paused halfway through, unable to find a word to say. What the other party said was true. If he were in the place of apothecary Bai Ming, upon realizing that his forging technique was nothing but flaws and the hard work he had devoted into it was nothing but rubbish, the confidence he had held for countless years would probably collapse in an instant. The moment he lost all his confidence, the trauma he received from it would cause him to be unable to forge a single pill for the rest of his life. Rather than suffer in anguish over it, he might as well simply make a vow to never forge a single pill anymore. Pill forging wasn't a joke. Mental state, skill, confidence, all of these factors were absolutely required. Without confidence, how could one be called an apothecary? To make an experienced apothecary lose all of his confidence and fear forging just by pointing out his mistakes. Such a thought flashed across their minds in an instant. Taking another glance at Xianxia, their hearts skipped a beat. It was no wonder that he was reluctant to speak of their flaws in pill forging. It was not that he was unable to discern anything from it and resorted to other methods to make up for his weakness. Only now did they know. The other party wasn't in the least as ignorant as they thought. Rather, it was because he knew too much that he feared he would shatter the last bit of confidence they had. Brother, we would like to ask you, are you the apprentice apothecary or are we? Chapter 118, The True Pill Debate. I admit defeat. After declaring that he would no longer forge pills, apothecary Bai Ming bowed deeply to Xianxia. It had been slightly more than 2 hours since the beginning of the pill debate and there were already 4 apothecaries who had admitted defeat. This conclusion was unexpected for all involved. Even Ouyang Cheng shuddered in disbelief. Previously, he didn't hold high hopes for Zhongxian's victory. He didn't expect it to end up like this. It was completely one-sided. It was no wonder that he was able to achieve a perfect score on the apprentice apothecary examination, even recognizing medicinal herbs that the examiners got wrong. His abilities were simply way too impressive. On the other hand, Wen Shui's eyes were full of fear and her body trembled non-stop. To think that she had mocked a person who could leave these apothecaries speechless. Was there something wrong with her head, or was she simply too gutsy? It was fortunate that the other party had no intentions of fussing over the matter with her. Otherwise, she could have even been expelled from the apothecary guild. I'll go. Upon seeing Bai Ming admit defeat and the silence that lingered around them, Du Man stepped forward. Please go easy on me. Forcing a smile onto his face, Du Man walked over to the cauldron. The pill he forged was grade 1-2. It was slightly inferior to the acupoint soothing pill and tranquil heart pill from before. His movements were fluid and swift. Soon, he managed to successfully forge the pills, all of which were at the level of satiation. The other party's attitude was amiable. Besides, they also became acquainted yesterday. As a result, Zhongxian didn't say too much and simply pointed out a few of the more obvious mistakes. The latter admitted defeat straight afterward. At this moment, out of the 10 apothecaries, 5 had already admitted defeat. The pill debate was halfway through. Let's continue. Who will be the next? With his hands behind his back, Zhongxian scanned the crowd calmly. Silence continued to linger around them. In the pill debate of other apprentice apothecaries, the examinee would always look at the examiner in fear, afraid that the other party would intentionally come up with difficult questions. Yet this fellow was the exact opposite. All of the remaining apothecaries cowered back, afraid of their names being called. If not witnessed it firsthand, no one would believe it possible. "I'll go." After another moment of silence, an elder stood up. Apothecary Lin Mu. Apothecary Cheng Jiang had once used the excuse of wanting to view his skills to secretly learn his personal forging technique, frost-threaded hands. "Apothecary Lin, please wait a second. This time, I would like to test him along with you." Right after Lin Mu stood up, a middle-aged man stood up as well. Apothecary Jin Chen. Together. Lin Mu frowned. How can two people forge pills simultaneously for the other party to point out their flaws? The fact that he can see through our flaws means that his ability to discern is impressive and he has undergone good education. It's very likely that he is under the guidance of a master teacher. However, I don't believe that the knowledge he has stored in his head can be as impressive as his discernment ability, especially given his age. So, let's not forge pills and instead bring up questions. Let's not be fooled by him. Apothecary Jin Chen harumphed. "This." Lin Mu was stunned. "That's right, why didn't I think of this? He isn't even 20 yet. Even if he could read right after he was born, how many books could possibly be read? How much of the content of each book could he possibly recall?" A true pill debate involves raising questions about pill forging for the examinee to answer. He must have known that he didn't have enough knowledge, so he intentionally heightened the difficulty to perceiving flaws in forging techniques instead. It is true that the difficulty has been raised, but if he had the guidance of a master teacher and came into contact with good education from a young age, it wouldn't be difficult for him to see through our mistakes. That's right, master teachers are extremely knowledgeable while on the other hand we are only one-star apothecaries. His discernment abilities can't possibly be weak being the disciple of such a figure. If so, it's understandable that he sees through our mistakes. Apothecary Jin Chen's words relit the flames in the four remaining apothecaries and they regained their confidence. The fact that the other party was able to see through their mistakes by viewing their pill forging could only mean that his discernment ability was outstanding. It didn't mean that he had to be knowledgeable. Since that was the case, questioning him might just turn out to be his weakness. All along, everyone had been fooled by this fellow. That's right. Lin Mu came to realization and nodded his head fervently. It was no wonder that everyone agreed with Jin Chen's view. After all, accumulation of knowledge required time and effort. This Xianxia, even with an optimistic estimate, couldn't possibly be 20 yet. Even if he read every day, how many books could he have possibly read? Furthermore, he still had to remember their contents. "You want to ask me questions instead?" Not expecting these people to come up with such a conclusion after a long moment of contemplation, Xianxia simply smiled faintly in response. "All right then, let's begin." After reading through the books in the basic tier book collection vault and the teacher's compendium pavilion, the knowledge in his head right now was significantly greater than that of these apothecaries. Even if they wanted to test his knowledge, he didn't have anything to fear. "I'll see whether you can retain your confidence when I stump you later on." Upon seeing that the other party held no fear whatsoever, a cold gleam flashed across Apothecary Jin Chen's eyes. "According to the rules of a normal pill debate, I can raise 3 questions. If you are able to answer all of them, I will have to admit defeat. On the other hand, if you fail to answer any one of the 3, you will have failed. All that you have accomplished beforehand would go to waste." There was a complete list of rules and regulations for pill debate. The 10 apothecaries weren't allowed to bring up as many questions as they pleased. Otherwise, wouldn't the examinee tire himself to death when undergoing pill debate? The examiners could only pose 3 questions each, and if the other party's answers were correct, they had to admit defeat. However, if he couldn't answer any one of the questions or he answered erroneously, it would be a straight failure, regardless of how many questions he had answered before that. Sure. Xianxia was also well aware of the rules. He nodded his head. "All right then, here is my first question. When forging a grade 1 body tempering pill, even when the pill comes out from the same cauldron and was at the same level of quality, it is possible for one pill to have outstanding effects while another has minuscule effects. What are the reasons behind this?" Apothecary Jin Chen asked. Upon hearing this question, the other apothecary's attention was piqued. Body tempering pill was a pill often consumed by Fighter 4 Dan. It could temper a person's physical body, allowing one to improve swiftly in the Pigu realm. This was also the reason why they often forged such a pill. However, just like what apothecary Jin Chen said, there would often be situations in which the medicinal effects in each pill were different despite coming from the same cauldron. Consuming the pills that came from the same cauldron, some experienced tremendous effects and advanced far in the Pigu realm while others found it completely ineffective for them. Apothecary Jin Chen sure picked a difficult question. Zhongxian shook his head. There is no clear answer to this question in the entire Xianxia kingdom. Yet you posed this question to me. How do you expect me to answer it? However, other people may be unable to say anything about this subject, but I have my own ways. Smiling lightly, Zhongxian said, as for the matter you said, an apothecary named Cheng Yi had already proposed it 37 years ago. Back then, he gathered 23 apothecaries and researched the matter for 3 days straight. He wrote the conclusion to their discussions in a book titled Cheng Yi's Body Tempering Theories. If you have read it, you should know what his conclusion is. He thinks that the reason for this difference has something to do with the constitution of a cultivator. Some people are born with a body compatible with body tempering pill while others' physique may be resistant to it. It's just like how some people have a high tolerance for alcohol while others don't. Back then, this theory received the approval of many people. However, 18 years ago, 3-star apothecary Zhong Jian noticed something that disputed this theory. If it was due to the constitution of an individual, then why was the second consumed pill effective for some individuals when the first one wasn't? Chapter 119. The True Pill Debate, Virtual Frappe. Clearly, the theory about the difference being attributed to the constitution does not hold. Thus, apothecary Zhong Jian investigated the matter and wrote the conclusion of his research into Discussions of Tempering Pill. This book clearly details his opinions, and he disagrees with the notion that the difference in effects of the body tempering pill is due to one's constitution. Rather, it was because the medicinal effects of the herbs weren't distributed fairly among the different pills during the forging process. As such, even in the same cauldron and among pills of the same quality, there could be different medicinal effects. This theory was accepted for a few years until 12 years ago, when someone cast doubts and overthrew it. The one who doubted the theory wasn't an apothecary but a 1-star master teacher. He questioned, if the medicinal effects weren't distributed fairly among the different pill, then why did such a phenomenon only occur to body tempering pills and not other pills? Therefore, he proposed a bold suggestion. It was recorded in Ning Han's verbal records. This book wasn't widely sold and there is only a single copy of it in the Guild's basic tier book collection vault. If you all haven't read it, it is in the 19th bookshelf, at the extreme right corner. Zhongxian chuckled and continued, this master teacher named Ning Han came up with a bold proposal. He thinks that the reason there was such an occurrence among body tempering pills was because of the difference between the maturity of the herbs and the forging technique of the apothecaries. Of course, he only brought it up as a theory and didn't experiment. 8 years ago, apothecary Zhao Yu from Hongxian Kingdom received an epiphany from this book and conducted an experiment. He changed 18 of the main medicinal herbs used in the pill and tried forging it using 42 different kinds of forging techniques. He wrote his conclusion in a book titled Detailed Explanation of Body Tempering. It just so happens that there is one of them in our basic tier book collection vault. It is on the 27th row, on the upper left corner, beside Yang Zhen's pill forging guide and the method to forging jade blood pill. If all of you doubt my words, you can find someone to fetch it here. I believe that the answer in the book is the most accurate one, and it should be able to answer your question. At this point, Zhongxian stopped and gestured for Ouyang Cheng to dispatch someone to fetch the book. There's no need. Upon hearing Zhongxian's explanation, the complexion of apothecary Jin Chen, who was still gleeful a moment ago, darkened to the color of the bottom of a wok and he stumbled 2 steps backward. In an instant, he seemed to have aged many years. What? If we don't fetch the book here, I fear that apothecary Jin will not accept my answer. Zhongxian said. Your answer is correct. I have read the book and it is identical to what you said. Apothecary Jin Chen nodded his head. Correct. Identical. That shouldn't be possible. Apothecary Jin Chen simply raised a casual question and he was able to answer it so simply. Furthermore, out of the countless books in the vault, he was able to remember its exact position. How is that possible? Is he still human? You must be pulling my leg. Upon hearing his acknowledgement, the room broke into a commotion once more. Previously, they thought that due to the limitations of his age, Xianxia wouldn't have the time to read many books. After this round, they realized that compared to him, they were the ones who hadn't read many books. Not only was the other party able to accurately remember the contents, time the book was written, and title of the book, he was even able to point out its exact location in the vault. For them, it would already be wonderful if they could remember the contents detailed within. Looked like there really was a huge difference between humans. Since Apothecary Jin Chen has acknowledged my answer to be correct, let's proceed on to the second question. Xianxia chuckled. You want to compete with me in memorization ability? What a joke. I have the Library of Heaven's Path in my mind. With a jolt of my consciousness, the book comes flying to me. I only have to read according to it. Regardless of how good your memory is, you can't possibly be more accurate than me. The second question. When forging a grade 1 strength enhancement pill, why do cracks appear on a cauldron, making it difficult to continue with the forging? Apothecary Jin Chen pondered for an entire 10 minutes before asking. Incredible. He chose an excellent question. Indeed, the cauldron often cracks while forging a grade 1 strength enhancement pill. On the surface, it seems like an apothecary's question, but to answer the question, you require knowledge of smithing as well. Indeed, let's see how he will answer the question. Upon hearing Apothecary Jin Chen's second question, everyone's attention was piqued again. An apothecary's cauldron was forged by blacksmiths, and the matter of it breaking during pill forging wasn't strictly within the boundaries of pill forging anymore. However, if one scrutinized the question carefully, it was still related to pill forging. It was precisely because it lay at the boundaries of the two that many apothecaries did not bother to learn about it, let alone answering such a question. Since everyone could tell what he was trying to do, how could Xianxia remain oblivious? The corners of his lips curled upward and he replied, as for this problem, Apothecary Wu Xiao's cauldron maintenance, Apothecary Zhao Qian's important matters to note for pill forging, Apothecary Niu Xian's miscellaneous things you have to know, Apothecary Pang Bo's protect your new cauldron. Without pausing, Xianxia listed the titles of dozens of books before concluding. The answers are detailed in these books. Actually, it wasn't really a difficult question. The cauldrons that you all use are made of ordinary 9 refinement metal. This metal may be strong, but it is unable to withstand the clash between extreme cold and heat. The main ingredient required for strength enhancement pill is the blood of a cold attribute savage beast. When something that cold comes into contact with the hot cauldron, it's natural that the cauldron's unable to withstand it. If you wish to resolve the problem, it is best to use heavy iron cauldron instead. Or you can also change your cauldron every time after you forge strength enhancement pills. Xianxia smiled. This question might seem difficult, but it was recorded in the books of the basic tier book collection vault as well. It was just that the number of books in the vault was too vast and the apprentices in the guild would often choose to research pill forging techniques so that they could become an official apothecary faster. As a result, there was no reason for them to look into these kinds of miscellaneous books. Furthermore, after becoming an official apothecary, one's standing would become completely different. With more guests paying them a visit and with more authority, they would have less time to read books. There were many things that they could learn from the book collection vault, but they never found the time to look for it, and as such they were ignorant of them. This was precisely the reason why the other apothecaries were unable to answer such questions. On the other hand, for Xianxia, who had duplicated a basic tier book collection vault in his mind, he had no difficulty answering this question at all. I wonder if Apothecary Jin Chen is satisfied with my answer. If not, I can still go on. There's no need, your answer is correct. Cold sweat appeared on Apothecary Jin Chen's forehead. When he started to forge strength enhancement pills, he met with such a problem. So he went around asking others to seek an answer. Eventually, he found his answer in a book, and that book was one of the dozen books which Xianxia had just listed, Protect Your New Cauldron by Apothecary Pang Bo. He thought that this was the only book which had detailed information on this subject, so he raised this question to trouble the other party. Yet this fellow was able to list more than a dozen books in a breath. It was fortunate that he didn't name the book earlier. Otherwise, he would be humiliated when the other party listed this huge collection of books. The heck, what is the head of this fellow made of? How could he remember everything so clearly? Upon seeing the situation, Xianxia and Du Man exchanged glances and smiled wryly. This was nothing. If you all knew that this fellow could even point out the specific page in the book, you probably wouldn't have insisted on conducting your test like that. In fact, the other party proposing to point out flaws in their forging technique was indeed raising the difficulty for him. If you wish to triumph against him in a competition of knowledge, we're afraid that you could only do it in your dreams. Chapter 120. Not a thing, since I've answered the second question already. Name your third one. Seeing the other party conceding the second question, Xianxia couldn't be bothered to continue lingering about the matter. I admit defeat. These are already the two most difficult questions I can think of. I will just be making a mockery of myself if I continue asking. Apothecary Jin Chen shook his head. The other party's action of listing out the names of so many books felled his confidence. He knew that if he continued like this, the only one being embarrassed would be him. He might as well surrender at this point. At least he could retain some dignity. You aren't going to ask the third question. Xianxia was taken aback for a moment before coming to a realization. Since he was able to easily answer the most difficult questions he could come up with, he would most likely be humiliating himself if he continued. Xianxia was impressed with Apothecary Jin Chen's decisiveness. It's your turn. He turned around to look at Lin Mu. Upon seeing Xianxia's attention turned onto him, Apothecary Lin Mu gritted his teeth and asked, I have a question which, honestly speaking, I don't have an answer to either. If you can't answer it, it won't be considered your defeat. However, if you can answer it, I will admit defeat right away. It will be pointless even if I ask any further than that anyway. In the pill debate, the examiner had to know the answers to the questions they were posing. Otherwise, when you don't even know the answer yourself, how can you determine whether the other party's answer is correct? Now that Apothecary Lin Mu had confessed that he wasn't able to answer this question either, logically speaking, it was already beyond the boundaries of the pill debate. Xianxia could reject to answer his question. It wouldn't be considered his defeat if he chose to do so. Speak. Xianxia casually said. Reject. Are you kidding? Since I can answer two fewer questions, it is obvious that I should answer his question. I have been researching Meridian Expansion Pill for a very long, and regardless of the forging method, the medicinal herbs, or the cauldron, I double-check them to make sure there is nothing wrong with them. But for some reason, I am unable to form the pill. I would like you to tell me the reason for my failure. Apothecary Lin Mu asked, after hesitating for a moment, what kind of question is this? Aren't you being a little too difficult here? That's right. You should find the reason behind why you're unable to successfully forge a pill yourself. How do you expect him to answer that question out of the blue? Upon hearing Lin Mu's words, everyone was dumbfounded for a moment before peculiar expressions crept onto their faces. When posing a question during a pill debate, one had to ask something that the other party could answer. Asking the other party how many moles you had on your body, how many meals you had yesterday, how many women you had relationships with. Even gods would be unable to answer these questions. Right now, Lin Mu's question was similar to those. You simply said that you were unable to forge the Meridian Expansion Pill. How do you expect the other party to answer your query? Cough cough, Apothecary Lin Mu, you have to ask a question with basis behind it. This question isn't suitable. You should switch to another one. Xianxia, who was conducting the pill debate, couldn't stand looking at the situation any longer and spoke up. I was being too rash. Upon hearing the words of the others, Lin Mu realized that his question was inappropriate. Thus, he shook his head, and just as he was about to say something else, Xianxia beat him to it. You weren't really rash. How about this? You try to forge a Meridian Expansion Pill for me first. I can't do anything about it through just your descriptions alone. All right. Lin Mu didn't expect the other party to agree. Nodding his head, he walked over to the cauldron. Actually, He didn't intend to ask this question initially. It simply popped into his mind all of a sudden. Recently, he had been thinking of forging meridian expansion pills, but for some reason, he was unable to succeed. He had researched many different books, tried many different forging techniques, and everything he could think of, but his forging still ended in failure. Upon seeing Xianxia pointing out the mistakes of the others so easily, he couldn't help asking him. As long as he was able to find the mistake behind it, he was confident that with his skills he could successfully forge it. Thinking that it was impertinent to ask this of him on such an occasion, he thought that the Xianxia would reject his question. He didn't expect him to actually accept his question. Fwoosh boosh. The flames burned furiously and all kinds of medicinal herbs flew inside. Lin Mu's 10 fingers looked like they were playing the zither, continuously dancing all about. Peering from afar, it seemed as though he were playing a heavenly tune instead of pill forging. With a single look, Xianxia could tell that the apothecary before him had immersed himself in the art of pill forging for countless years and was already well versed in it. With such skills and a completely flawless forging sequence, he was still unable to successfully form the pills. This perplexed him. There is no errors at all. With such skills, he could successfully forge a strength enhancement pill. Why would he be unable to form the meridian expansion pill? Indeed, that's strange. Everyone's attention gathered on apothecary Lin Mu as he started his forging. The more they watched, the more puzzled they became. It was exactly as he said. Regardless of whether it was the medicinal herb, his movements, or any other significant factors, there wasn't a single error at all. Reasonably speaking, he should at least be able to form the pills. In fact, the pill would likely reach satiation. To be unable to form the pills. That was impossible. Unfortunately, reality glared straight back at them. Soon, the flames died down and upon lifting the lid of the cauldron, a black sludge of medicinal waste presented itself before the people. Fail. This doesn't make sense. Ouyang Cheng's wrinkled his brow to the point it folded into creases. As the guild leader of the Apothecary Guild and a 1-star intermediate stage apothecary highest of the group here, his discernment ability was also outstanding. After looking at the entire process, his conclusion was the same as the others, that pills would be formed. Yet the results were contrary to his expectations. A puzzled expression hung on his face and he contemplated the matter seriously. Sigh. Upon seeing the pitch-black medicinal waste in the cauldron, apothecary Lin Mu sighed and shook his head. He lifted his head to look at the young man. This is the question I would like to ask you. If you can answer it, I will admit defeat straight away. However, if you can't answer, I will switch to a different question. It won't affect the results of the pill debate. Can't answer. Xianxia laughed. Stepping over to the cauldron, he circled around it and examined the medicinal waste. After that, he lifted his head to look at apothecary Lin Mu with a bizarre expression on his face. Apothecary Lin Mu sure is vigorous despite your age. I never thought it possible. Vigorous despite my age. Lin Mu was taken aback. What does me being vigorous have to do with whether I am able to successfully forge the pill or not? Is there even a relationship between the two? The other apothecaries also looked over with doubtful expressions. Previously, they would have publicly criticized him and doubted his words. However, after witnessing his vast knowledge and his ability, they understood that he had good reason for saying such words. Indeed. Upon walking over, I noticed a fragrance unique to women on apothecary Lin's body. Furthermore, the scent is refreshing, pure and full of life. If I'm not wrong, she should not yet be 18 years old. Xianxia said. Indeed, I just brought a concubine into my household. She hasn't reached 18 yet. Apothecary Lin Mu's face flushed red. He was already nearing 70. He had a foot in the grave, but he had brought a 17-year-old concubine back home. Even though it didn't mean anything much in this world, he was still embarrassed to have the fact pointed out in front of so many other apothecaries. Could it be that the reason why I am unable to forge the meridian expansion pill is because of my concubine? Soon, Lin Mu arrived at a conclusion. Puzzled, he stared at Xianxia. If there was no relationship between the two, given Xianxia's previous actions, he probably wouldn't point it out. Just that, How was accepting a concubine related to forging pills? They were two completely different things. You're right. If I'm not wrong, that concubine of yours isn't a thing. Xianxia pondered for a moment before replying calmly. Not a thing. Lin Mu was flabbergasted for a moment before frowning. Infuriated, displeasure showed on his face. Why did you start insulting her? Thank you for listening to PandaAudioBooks. If you love what you hear and want to support my work, check out the PayPal link in the description. Every bit helps. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notifications bell to stay updated with all our latest audiobook chapters. We'll see you in the next one.